This is what we are trying to. Between now and when we have the code of conduct in place, I will urge everybody to observe common sense, and we are discussing technical and policy issues, and avoid cracking jokes that can be perceived as offensive. Thank you very much. Okay, our next session, titled Emerging Technologies, Part 2. We are going to focus on AI and blockchain. This session is going to be moderated by Mr. Abdelmini Flores.
شغال درس لك اللي بس جديد هاي ما هي فيديو بينك اي سيشن بيقول خلي اللينك شغال انت شغال لا ما كان كده هيكون بتسجل في بريك
Abdelmini is a deputy manager of MES
second session
CCTLD. He is also a member of the task force on Arab Split IDN that focuses on secure deployment and ease of use of Arabic IDNs. He is contributing to the root zone and second level LGR universal acceptance for the Arab Split domain name. His work at the Must IDN CCTLD has made him realize the importance of ICANN, is ICANN since 2010 and has followed Diana's vision. He is also a member of the Universal Acceptance Group. The group concept is that all domain names should be treated equally. Recently, he is elected to be UA ambassador. He is a member of emoji study group that targets using emojis in the second level domain name and how this affects the security and other issues related to emoji like similarities. He recently joined Afro after ICANN 63, where Afro is the home of the individual intellectual community for the African region.
Good morning, everybody. This is Abdelmini Galila from Egypt for moderating the second part of the session of emerging technologies. To remember that the first part was about Internet of Things and big data. So I have 4 panelists for today. We will discuss 3 main topics. The first topic will be artificial intelligence, or maybe you can call it machine intelligence. The second part will be smart contracts, and then blockchain. So my panelist for today will be Muhammad Yusuf for artificial intelligence, Dr. Walid, and blockchain for blockchain. I don't know why blockchain looks seriously here in this picture. I don't know. We also have Dr. Musa Gamal from Egypt. So now we will start. Kindly, my panelists, introduce yourself one by one, please. Bob, could you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you very much, Chair of the session. My name is Bob Ochieng. I'm from ICANN. I'm based in Nairobi, and I'm from Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Walid Hassan, from Sudan.
My name is Hussein El-Gamal. I am the chairman of AFICTA, African ICT Alliances. It's a business association that gather members from businesses from 30 African countries. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Muhammad Yusuf. I'm a team leader of programming and open source at the Internet Society Sudan chapter. And I am also the chairperson of Sudan Internet Governance Forum Programming Committee. I also work at the senior software engineer at the telecommunications and post regulatory authority, Sudan. Thank you.
again for the moderator. Now, I know all of you that this time is before the lunch, so you feel somehow sleepy after taking the breakfast. So please take care. I will ask you a question at some time. Okay? Agree? Yeah, so the first topic for today, we have artificial intelligence, where the artificial intelligence is an area of computer science that emphasizes the creation of intelligent machines that work and interact with the human. Second session will be about smart contracts. I believe that everything in this world is according to protocol. So smart contracts will be like a protocol. For blockchain is somehow a growing list of records called blocks, which is linked using cryptography. First, we will start by the presentation of smart contracts by Dr. Ali. Just a second. The question will be after the end of our discussion. Yeah, Dr. Ali, the floor is yours. Waleed, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. To get started, I would like to thank you all for taking time and coming here today. As you know, I'm Walid Hassan, Technology Manager. I started focusing on blockchain 4 or 5 years ago. So my presentation today is about smart contracts. And it will be divided into 4 main sections. Well, firstly, I will talk about what is a smart contract and why we need it. Then I'll move forward to talk about some facts. I will give you some facts about this great technology. Then I will share with you some challenges for adopting this technology in our today's businesses. And then I will show you some opportunities and use cases for this amazing technology. Okay, so let's get in. Okay, this is the agenda of this presentation. Okay, so what is the smart contract? Basically, smart contract is the computer code that is stored inside of a blockchain that contain a contractual agreement. And it contains any business logic that you want to execute on a blockchain network. And it's a building blocks for making a decentralized applications. To demonstrate it more, I can give you some examples of smart contracts. So the first example is if we want to write, a payroll system, for example, we can write a smart contract that accept the money and then distribute it to predefined employees inside the contract itself. And to understand the job, let me give you another example. In a first generation of blockchain, there is a account that is controlled by the private key. You have an account that have an public address that you can access money with this public address, and private address that that you can use to send the money. In the second generation of blockchain, another account comes into the picture. It calls a smart contract that is controlled by code, by computer code. Is entirely controlled by computer code instead of private key that is the first generation of blockchain. And and it's like a vending machine, as many people say that. It's like a vending machine that you choose a product and put the money into it. Then the machine will work algorithmically and then release product to you. Okay? So why do we need smart contracts? Why do we need to use it? Why do we need to use smart contracts? There is many benefits of using smart contracts. I choose 3 of them, but there is many benefits. Autonomy. There is no need to rely on third parties, which could be biased or not have your interest at heart. There is no need to rely on third party when you're using smart contracts. It executes automatically with the computers connected to the blockchain networks. And second benefits of using smart contracts is redundancy. All of your documents, everything of value is duplicated many times over the blockchain. You know, the smart contract is stored inside a blockchain. It inherits features of a blockchain like redundancy and immutability. Once a code published to a blockchain network, no one can modify this. It's immutable. Also, one of the biggest features of smart contracts is precision. Smart contracts execute the exact code divided, ensuring 0 errors. Well, then let's move to the next part. I will show you some facts and information about this amazing technology. First, the global blockchain security. Yeah. The global blockchain security ledger market is likely to touch more than 5 million by 2023. I think it will be bigger than this number, especially when the Internet of Things come into the picture, which every device needs to talk to each other, and every device connected to Internet need to make a transaction with each other. And this will create something we call Internet of Value. The second fact about this great technology is education institutions are turning to blockchain as way to avoid federal certifications, as well to ease record keeping needs for students and alumni. Then, 50% of banks are working with technology companies to automate the transaction process via blockchain. 50% of the banks in the world are working with a technology company to automate the transaction process with this great technology. It's estimated that banks could save 8 to 12 billion annually if they use blockchain technology. Did you hear this big number? 8 to 12 billion dollars per year can be saved by banks if it uses this great technology. By the way, you can find all this information and the references at the end of the presentation. It's a big number. It's 8 to 12. It's bigger than the budget of state as such. Also, companies invested about 1.4 billion in blockchain initiatives in 2016 alone. Just in 2016, companies invested this number, $1.4 billion in blockchain technology. Well, this is some facts about this great technology that I showed you. Then I will move forward to the next section, the challenges. The challenges for adopting this technology in today's businesses. There is many challenges out there, but I choose only 5 of them, sure. But there is many challenges for adopting this great technology, this new technology. It's a new technology. It forms 10 years ago. Challenge 1, the adoption curve. Today's businesses have a lot of transactions, and to transition to the blockchain, you need to overcome some obstacles. You need to transform the current transaction environment that has a regular high-volume stream of records entering the system. This will take a significant time and effort for businesses today to come to this new technology, to convert from the old technology to this new technology. It will take a time and effort. The reality of the legal and regulatory environment. Regulations, are among the least automated elements of the business ecosystem. Because of its nature, they are inflexible too. Smart contracts may be the trigger to tackle this reality. Also, one of the challenges is the complexity of the business ecosystem. The installed base of technologies, processes, and procedures reflects many assumptions businesses need to revisit when considering how to build smart contracts capabilities to specific business processes. As I told you, it takes time and effort to make this transition from old technology to this new technology. Also, because of a new technology, it's emerging technology, there is no standards right now. There is no standards. What exactly are the best practices of smart contracts? Does not exist right now. And how will standards emerge? There is no standards right now because it is an emerging technology. Well, also, one of the challenges for adopting this technology in our today's businesses is government-related issues. How should government regulate such contracts? Government need to regulate everything, and need to tax everything. Every transaction, government need to tax, to get the tax from it. How will government tax these smart contract transactions? This is one of the challenges of this technology. Then, in the next part, I will show you some opportunities of this technology and some use cases of this technology. Okay, this technology can be used in many fields, like banks and medical sections and supply chain, and also in real estate, and also in insurance companies, and in digital identity, and Internet of Things. Many fields can benefit from this great technology, and it can work on many businesses today. To recap, the smart contract is a computer code that is stored inside of a blockchain that contains a contractual agreement that and it works on IFTP logic. If this, then that logic. It contains any business logic that you want, and stored and executed by the computers connected to the blockchain networks, by the nodes connected to the blockchain networks. This is a smart contract. And there is many benefits of using this new technology, as I showed you. And there is many challenges for adopting this technology, like learning curve and the time and efforts and regulations, standards. There's no standards, you know. And there is many opportunities to use this technology, as I showed you, banking sections, and many of this. Finally, my recommendation is, this is a reference that I use. My recommendation is for banks and financial companies to start adopting today, start adopting this new technology into your business today, start from today. And I know that many initiatives here in Sudan. There is Bitcoin Meetup Group, and there is Blockchain Researchers Group, and also in Africa, there is African group called Genesis Block Africa that works on this great technology. Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Walid. What I understand that smart contract is based upon blockchain. So, Bob, do you mind to give us details about what is blockchain and how does it work?
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll be a bit broad, and I look at the session and I see we have two major items to discuss about, which is artificial intelligence and blockchain. And maybe from the outset, if I were to come back from an IT perspective just briefly, because it might not be entirely really what would be a focus area within ICANN. But definitely I might have a few things to say about different topics. I think we need to, first of all, maybe break this down, that we are not, for example, talking about a different internet. I think most of the time when we mention these terms, they look very big, and I think most of the time we seem to be speaking about things that are only imagined, that are new, that are to come. But I think it is important to stress that we are talking about the same internet, and simply extending and looking at the different use cases that is coming out, or that is being enabled by the same internet, meaning that the fundamental principles of the operation of the internet remains. And this is what is happening at the edge of the internet. And if you look at the internet coming inwards, what is at the core remains fundamentally the same. Artificial intelligence, for example, you would define it as big data and deep learning plus high performance computing. If you combine those three items, then you have artificial intelligence. And then you might want to ask yourself then, what roles, or who is playing which role in achieving or in enabling those three elements? Because that, in my understanding, is what makes artificial intelligence achievable. There has to be data, and there has to be some learning that is coming out of the data that is facilitated by some computing. So today, are we in Africa, for example, playing in any of those three parts of the artificial intelligence ecosystem, if I could put it like that? A simple question, for example, do we all have emails in this room? I think is a yes. Which emails do we have? We'll start telling you where the data is. I think somebody has actually said that the next divide is the data divide. Apart from the digital divide that we're talking about, we have a real data divide, because not only is the digital gap widening, but our data is also somewhere else. So it's a serious gap that we are looking at. And then it is that same data that today we are saying is the next oil. So everything is already a disadvantage, or you would actually say that we are starting from a disadvantaged position, or we are actually perpetrating that disadvantage, because we are not taking measures to correct the data part, because data is a key element of being a fundamental player in artificial intelligence. So how can we discuss artificial intelligence when even the data that should make that happen is not with us, even though it is our data? So there are different elements of the ecosystem that is making this data disparity alive. And I think we are playing a very significant role in making that happen. Starting with the kind of emails that we have, for example. You all know that in the process of getting your email, you give certain data. And because of the type of emails that you have, for example, that data is going into a specific place. So we need to address that. And then the other three elements I think comes into place. I think that is significant. I think Dr. Wadid has talked about smart contracts. In Kenya, for example, I would say I'm not aware about other countries, but recently the Ministry of ICT actually established a task force to look at distributed ledgers for blockchain, for example, and make a national recommendation to the government on how they can actually leverage the opportunities of blockchain as a government. So that is leadership, really identifying that this is a technology that is here with us today. How can it help us? Our problems in Africa have not changed. So if it is about jobs, or joblessness, or lack of those jobs, that is a problem that any government or any politician want to solve. So if we are going to be talking about these big terms, and there is no relation with the actual problem that the politician is seeing in the electorate that took into office, then I'm sure we shall continue to really complain about them not supporting such initiatives. These terms we are talking about must make sense to the government. If you're talking about blockchain, how does it address poverty? How does it address health? And it has to be concrete proposals on how it can address those offline problems that they are seeing. I'm sure today we talked about what is happening among Africans crossing the Mediterranean and the challenges that have happened in the process. How can blockchain, for example, address that? Now you come back to data. And I'll make an example in Kenya, for example. It is increasingly in the news that we are consuming more and more fish, for example, from China. And it happens that this particular fish is actually cheaper than the fish from our very own, rivers and lakes. But if you went to the ministry responsible and asked, how much fish do we produce? They know. how much fish do we need as a country? They might not give you an answer. Now, for fish to, or for somebody to bring in fish from China and sell it at a cheaper price within your within your borders, it means that he has actually done he has done some due diligence and known how much you produce, how much you need, and seen the deficit that you don't have. That is what data does. But you see, we are not doing that at all. We are not doing data driven or data informed decisions. Maybe the government is not to blame. I think it is an opportunity for industry to come into. So I'm just trying to say that we have to break down these big names that we are mentioning here to a level that it solves an existing problem, because those problems indeed exist. How are they going to solve that problem? How is blockchain going to solve the joblessness? That is what will make sense. That is what will make a government allocate resources, for example, to address a certain issue. So I think I want us to relate the two so that the solution is practical, it was just high level. And then we can talk about policy, because if it is addressing an issue that is at the heart of government, then they'll be happy to actually look at the enabling environment, what kind of policies will then make this right. So that would be my introductory note on these big terms, big data, artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things. I feel if we address it from that perspective, then it make much more sense than really talking at a very high level. But sometimes I feel makes us talk to ourselves and to nobody else behind us. This way. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, there is something point that Bob said that about blockchain, for what he said about smart contract, it depends on blockchain. And for Bob, he said that blockchain is somehow concerned with artificial intelligence. So, Muhammad, could you give us more details about artificial intelligence?
Assalamu alaikum, very good morning to you all. Artificial intelligence, I think the first thing that comes to one's mind when they hear the term artificial intelligence is that machines will one day overtake human and they will control the world. So I'm going to start by asking you a simple question. Who of you thinks that machine will overtake human and will control the world? Can you show me your hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 6. Who thinks machines will overtake human and will control the world one day? Only 6? Okay, I think the rest of you are very optimistic about this, and I'm afraid your optimism will last no longer. I was going to give you a definition on artificial intelligence, but I would rather show you a brief video on what artificial intelligence. Okay, I think that is. Yeah, I think that is enough. I'm sorry for the sound. Yeah, that wasn't there. But it's no problem. People in the past were just thinking that robots will not be able to move, to take the stairs, for instance. So if you are afraid of robots, you should sleep in the second floor or the third floor. So this case is no longer valid, I think, since you have seen this. It is actually a broad area of computer science that makes machines seem like they have human intelligence. And it was it was in 1959 that the term machine learning came to the scene when the first game of checker was created. And then in the 20th century, it was the first computer software that defeated the world chess champion. But it wasn't until 2016 that human beings have come to realize the danger that artificial intelligence poses. After the famous battle that was like human versus machines, I mean, who have seen the battle of human versus machines? The AlphaGo project. Can I can you show me if you've seen like the AlphaGo, if you know anything about the AlphaGo project? Yeah, the Alpha, it's like 5 people. Okay. The AlphaGo project was a project by Google, and it was like the battle that everyone was waiting for. It was a living proof that machine could be smarter than human, that machines could do things in far smarter way than human can do. And the computer software had beaten the world champion of the Go game. It was like 3-0. From that point on, many countries such as Japan, China started investing in artificial intelligence. Now, I'm not saying that artificial intelligence is a bad idea or the singularity moment will come very soon, but I'd like to emphasize on the importance of regulating AI and putting policies, developing policies for the AI by the African Union, by the United Nations. And actually, the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla company, Elon Musk, I think many of you may know him. He and 100 bosses of technology filed a draft to the UN Secretary asking to regulate and to stop the killer drones and the killer robots because governments and states have started to invest on killer drones and weapons, intelligent weapons. So we have robots on the one hand that are capable of killing everyone. The problem with robots is that they do not have the human feeling. They do not feel, really. They do not think in critical situations. Yes, we have human intelligence. And let me just define 3 areas of artificial intelligence. We have the artificial narrow intelligence. That area is concerned with the one task that a computer software or a machine can do. So when you hear the term artificial narrow intelligence, it's a machine that can do one task. Like the speech recognition task is just one task. Like the facial recognition task is just one task. Image processing it's just one task. Handwriting recognition it's just one task. So this is the artificial narrow intelligence. It tells you that this machine is capable of handling this one thing. It's capable of solving one problem. And then, secondly, we have the artificial general intelligence. The artificial general intelligence, or the AGI, is the part of artificial intelligence that signifies the capability of a machine to be as smart as human. is a machine that can do everything that the human mind can do. We can see this, I think, very clearly if any of you watched the movie of Her. You know, it tells a story of a person who fell in love with an operating system, and then he married the operating system. Have you seen that? Yeah, I've seen one of the, two of those. Yeah, that's great. 3, 4, 5, yes, Her. So that was a movie. So this is an example of artificial general intelligence. It was a guy who fell in love with a computer system, and then he married that computer system, and then he got divorced. He went through like that was a real relationship between humans and computer systems. And then we have the third one, and the most dangerous one, is the artificial superintelligence. The artificial superintelligence is a part of computer science that actually that is concerned with how to make machines way smarter than human. It's just a computer program that does everything that human can do, and above that it can do like, well, for instance, we are in this hall. It has the capability of doing everything each and every single one of us can do. So our effort collectively, one machine can do all of this, and it can store the amount of information. Do you know that the machine, computer software, artificial intelligence software can consume knowledge? The knowledge that it consumes in 6 hours is equal to the knowledge that a human being can consume in 60 years. So can you imagine that? I mean, since the day you were born until you are 60 years, the computer software can take all this knowledge and can store it, and it never forgets, by the way. It never forgets. But like human, you might forget some of the knowledge that you've gained throughout all these years. But the computer, of course, will not forget. This is one asset that actually gives them advantage over human. I think this is a brief introduction about artificial intelligence, and I'll hand the floor to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Muhammad, for this brief. Before going to the next part, I would like to ask 3 questions. But before I ask Walid the first question, how many lawyers do we have here in this session? Please raise your hand. Lawyers. No lawyer here. One lawyer? Okay. Now, smart contract is the definition of lawyer. This is the first question. Second question, who manages what? Who manages what? This is a blockchain. Who owns every node from this blockchain? What is the regulation for this? Second question, who will be the startup boy for this block for this chain? Second question was who manages what? The floor is usually.
Okay, thank you for this question. Does a smart contract replace lawyers? Yes. Replace it in the near future. And lawyers, I think, should learn some programming techniques to just overcome this. And woman is what? The network is managed by everyone that connected to the network. Every node connected to the network can control. Nobody controls the network. And the blockchain is, is decentralized network. Nobody can control it. Nobody control the network. And the third question was?
Second question, who will be the startup point for storing or validating this blockchain node? The first node should be started from maybe Africa, maybe ICANN, maybe other entities.
If I understood well the question, well, blockchain is a tool to be used depending on the industry where you are going to apply the blockchain. So, for example, blockchain, one of the famous uses of blockchain is traceability. And with the traceability, each one will give his signature, his approval for what is concerned for him. So if we are going to talk about traceability of food products, for example, coming from a farm, going to the end user, then it starts at the farm, who will put his signature on his product, saying this is my product, this is the quality, and there is a spectrometer that will have the information about the product that he has, and this is the first signature. Now, it will be moving in a truck, and it will arrive to a distributor. This is the second point, second node that will have another stamp on it. And so each one of them, this could be even in government for someone like anybody like us who is going to work somewhere. So Ministry of Education will have the stamp saying, you don't need to put this and bring your documents, etc. Already once you are there, Ministry of Education has stamped on the blockchain's part that you are graduated from this school. The social insurance stamp that you have your social insurance, etc., etc. That's just
Yeah, again. Now I think Mary would like to ask a question about where is Africa from these technologies? Yeah, could we have a end?
Where is Africa? You can look at their faces. You know, if you want to know where Africa is in this technology, then try to type in your name, you know, in a browser, for example, or when you want to search for something. Type your African name. Most likely you will be asked whether you mean this. You understand what I'm talking about? That is where Africa is. Because somebody else is currently doing it. Africa is basically not there. If you look at speech recognition, for example, the software that do speech, and we talked about languages in Africa, I think on day 0, over 3,000 languages. I would be happy when there is a time when there is an African language that is actually, there is a processor for an African language. But it will not come because it will need an African to do it, which has been a problem. So the opportunity is huge, and if you look at when we could actually solve real issues, is huge, but nobody is really seeing this as an opportunity. It really hurts, and every time when you look at your speech completion, for example, you try to type something, it is struggling to correct it for you, while you really mean what you're typing, but it thinks you mean the other thing, That is the opportunity for us, yes. And if we stepped up and started to apply this to solve our inherent challenges without waiting for somebody to come and do it and then bill us directly or indirectly for it, I think that would be a huge milestone.
So, what do you think? What are the steps required to get Africa involved in this technology and make this space smart?
I think the first thing is to realize that we have a challenge and an opportunity. If you looked at the statistics, for example, in our investment or in our financing going into research, for example. And by the way, in Africa, you're not supposed to fail in anything. If you ever got funding for anything and you failed, if it was, at least where I come from, it was a government fund, for example, then that will be the end of it. You know, failure is stigmatized. You're not supposed to fail. But I think that in these technologies, those that have actually succeeded must have failed many times, but yet somebody still believes in, putting their resources in them. So, by and large, we fail to take off because we don't value, that process that it includes failure, and you should still invest in it. So we want something that is ready, functional, that is perfect, but we fail to realize and recognize that it takes a bit of investment, and actually it could be a long time for a solution such as this to really function the way it's supposed to be. So the first instance when you fail, you forget about it and you want to buy the one that works. And that is how we actually export every other thing out there. We are buying from out there. We are supporting those industries outside because we feel they are functional. So we need to invest and reinvest before something works. So that understanding is necessary across policymakers and across entrepreneurs.
I think Africa is not so far away from this mode. 2 days ago I heard about Kenyan company, Kenyan startup company that created a new coin called, I think, Onyx coin. It's a new payment method based on a blockchain technology. And also there is a group that I told you in the presentation called Genesis Block Africa that works in this field. And also here in Sudan, we have many groups of blockchain, like Bitcoin entrepreneur and blockchain researchers. I think Africa is not so far away from this technology.
Thank you very much. Floor is yours, Dr.
يعني allow me to say that blockchain technology by itself is not something difficult. It's a nice tool, and what became famous about it was the Bitcoin concept. But Bitcoin is just one application, blockchain. What I have seen around in Africa, at least two types, there is quite a good maturity in the banking sector. They have realized that this is the future, and unless they hook on it, they will lose ground. And many banks everywhere are now educating their teams to how to use blockchain to their interest. And usually banking industry is a little bit ahead. But they are working on it quite clearly, and there are now experts in blockchain within the banking system in different African countries. The other application that I have seen from Africa was mainly related to traceability, and again for food traceability. And this came from the need, because simply African countries export a lot of agriculture food. And there is always this debate about what went wrong. And is it exactly the quality that we are looking for, etc. So blockchain was used in very simple application form with it's like two things together. A way of identifying the product. So at the beginning it was about code techniques, etc. Now they use spectrometers and they use the MRIs, sort of rays that they are using to be able to right away identify the amount of sugar, the amount of salt, and all ingredients within the product right away. And then it uses the blockchain technology for the supply chain, the whole supply chain, till it arrives to the consumer at the supermarket in a country in Europe. And many startups, by the way, have done this. So it's a great opportunity. The real issue is not to develop a solution based on supply chain. The real issue and real challenge is to adopt generally the supply chain and to put the right policies that would help this flourish but serve the human being, the supply chain and the artificial intelligence in general.
Thank you, Hassan.
I think just I'd like to add that I'd like to emphasize one of my other panelists have said, and I'd like to mention the activities in Sudan. I think the only application of blockchain that we have is the cryptocurrency and the Bitcoin to be specific. I think we have quite a large community of Bitcoins, and I think in other African countries we have met with people who are very active in Bitcoin, which again, Bitcoin is dollars. We have this here in Sudan. We have active community here who do exchange regularly. Bitcoin is even Sudanese Guinea. And I think I'm glad that I'm seeing such technologies emerging here in Sudan. But the application of blockchain, I think this requires policies, it requires high energy, it requires awareness, it requires but it has a lot of work to be done before applying the blockchain. Thank you.
Just a quick remark. High energy is not for the blockchain. High energy is for mining bitcoins. And it's a totally different issue. This is interesting to talk about mining as a new concept as well that is coming. Distributed energy consumption, distributed power and computer power consumption. So that now mining is the fact that you are using the computers of everyone, everywhere, to make computer operations and to achieve results instead of having your own supercomputer. And this is, by the way, something extremely interesting because we in Africa, we don't have those supercomputers everywhere. So maybe one of the things that we may consider in the future is using mining for achieving better results, better computing results, while we don't have the power all consolidated in one place.
Yes, I think I do believe this is for mining, but what I mentioned is for the calculation of this. Yes, to distribute the processing power across many platforms and many computers is one of the solutions through which we can solve the problem of the high energy. Nonetheless, we still do have miners and mining farms across many countries that are generating high amounts of power, and actually scientists and blockchain scientists have raising concerns about the amount of power that such technologies may expose the world to. So that was my point. Thank you.
Yeah, as a conclusion for this part, that Africa is not far away from these technologies. So before we get involved from Africa into this technology, we want to know the issues that this technology will try to fix. There are a lot of issues that technology used to fix it. So could you help us in that?
So I think I'll go back to just a few steps and just reinforce the fact that the basic framework must be in place. And I think in the last 2 days we've seen how we are faring on in terms of what percentage of Africa is even online. And, I mean, infrastructure will always have to be available first. And then you must then have content that is relevant. You must have users that actually can use that platform, and it should be affordable. So assuming that is in place, or assuming that the 30% or 20% that is connected today is actually connected, then with the realization that this is not a new thing that we're talking about, it is the other use cases of that platform, of the internet that is in place. So we must address the basics, fundamental, but not forget that this is happening and we should also be part of it. In terms of policy, I would say that I think we should be open to allow innovations and be open-minded, even from a regulatory perspective, to give chances, delay requirements, including for spectrum, for some of these things to happen. I'll give an example of, today there are companies in Rwanda, for example, that are delivering, blood using drones, for example. Now, for them to have gotten to that stage, one of the things that they needed for that to happen was spectrum. But if the regulator, for example, was not open, and I think Rwanda is among the few countries that have allowed, a spectrum for drones, and actually they're being used to deliver commercial items. If that was not allowable from a policy perspective, then you wouldn't expect that to happen. So I'm talking about being open to new technologies from a policy perspective, and the fact that there isn't existing or currently existing legal framework should be actually exploited as an opportunity, because rules normally are made towards a regulatory point or a control point of view. So in there, if they don't exist, I think it should be interpreted to mean an open space to make something happen before the rule comes. That is how things like mobile money have succeeded in some spaces, because they started before the rules were made. So I think that openness of the society, the policy arm of that society to new technology is critical for the uptake. But I think that we need to accept the fact that these technologies are with us, and we need to exploit them to our own unique needs, which are very different from what is happening in other countries.
Okay. Now, do we have an example of systems who currently use one of these technologies?
Sorry, pardon me, Chair. I don't mean to interrupt, but can you please open the discussions also to the people down here?
At the end of the discussion here, we will open the floor. Don't worry. We still have 30 minutes. Don't worry. No, we still have 30 minutes. We start at 11:30. We should finalize at 1 p.m. Not 10:30. 11:30. But do you have an example for this technology used inside any country? Yeah.
So the best case I would use is what has just happened in Kenya. I think that, like I mentioned, so the ministry formed a task force to look at distributed ledger, which is blockchain by extension. And one of the recommendations that is coming out once the report is published, of course, the drafts have been presented in various fora, is smart contracts, for example. But I must be quick to add that on that particular proposal alone, I think the lawyers had very interesting protest about it, because there was a feeling of a section of the legal fraternity, at least in Kenya, felt that this was coming to take away, what the law entitles them to do, because, like he said, it eliminates, third parties. So where do the lawyers fit in the smart contract, which is a direct application of blockchain? But if you look at, so we talked about the ease of doing business index, and you saw the listing for African countries. Now, a significant component that goes into developing that index is, for example, how to register, the process of registering property, and land included. In Kenya today, I will tell you, one of the most difficult things is to buy a piece of land, because you are potentially, it is possible to get 5 title deeds for the same piece of land. Now, blockchain would eliminate that, because you're talking about an immutable record. And because you are eliminating chaos, or by extension, third parties, they are actually bent to protest or to resist. So if you look at the lands records or land record management, it's a clear area of application of smart contract. But then you expect that the current players who could be thriving in the chaos that exists presently will protest, and they have very good reasons to protest. So for me, that's a direct application that could be replicated across many countries, because a title deed ideally should only be one for any piece of land. That is what this ensures, but that is what the resistance will not allow you to do.
Go ahead.
I just want to say something. I think not something completely irrelevant to the AI. We have the lunch break from 12:30 to 1:30, so I think we should. It's just, I suggest we open the question for the floor.
Okay, we will open the floor after 10 minutes to start the discussion. We already have around 25 minutes left.
Can I have please?
Yeah, okay.
Secretary would like to announce those who have given their passport to Madam the Secretary of the African Union to go there and collect some money from her. At any time from now. Thank you.
So now, what are the benefits or risks for using these technologies? Yeah, Dr. Hussam, could you give your input?
Yeah, we have covered a lot in blockchain, so I'll go to artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, there are a lot of benefits and there are a lot of risks and a lot of policy consideration. Artificial intelligence, if we start again, we are a continent that is by origin an agriculture continent. So there are a lot of applications in agriculture that can benefit from artificial intelligence. Simply, artificial intelligence, by putting sensors in the equipment in the traditional farms to help better control the irrigation process, will save water and at the same time will produce same quality, good quality product. Artificial intelligence in the agriculture, by putting sensors that would help pesticiding, putting saying that will help the environment, but minimizing the use of pesticide, and at the same time will maintain the quality that is required. Artificial intelligence put with sensor that would reflect in the agriculture by being able to automatically identify if there are animals that are having disease, can help farmers to minimize the potential of disease outbreak. In energy, artificial intelligence would help better managing the energy grid, but especially for renewable energy, can analyze the big data coming from it, and depending on that can decide how to maneuver on the grid and can minimize the disruption of the energy and minimize the expensive projects energy projects that may be required. In health, artificial intelligence can help in the symptom identification and access to treatment. And some example had been done for diabetic retinography, where the deep learning help the machine to be able to identify who may have a diabetic retina. So this would make, but as a result, would have automated diagnosis that would be much faster, would save money and effort, and would help more population to get engaged. Other benefit in, of course, as we said, in the supply chain, where it would help all stakeholders in the supply chain so that businesses can predict and regulate inventory, can have a better and faster and cheaper routes to use, and can reduce the disruptions that can take place. In transportation and mobility, what we call smart cities now, it can enhance a lot the traffic, and gradually would have autonomous buses, etc., based on artificial intelligence. Can enhance the cyber security and the counter fraud by learning, by machine learning and deep machine learning. It can diagnose quicker the potential of detect quicker the potential of malicious activity, and can automatically alert other on the system all over the world, so it can minimize the potential risks associated with. Those are example of benefits of artificial intelligence, and that are many more based on the big data that would be coming on. But of course, there are a lot of challenges that comes with that. Not just for the developing world, but even for the developed world. It is good that we are talking the same now. Maybe we are not doing enough R&D to have our own artificial intelligence products, while we have some that it has been done, but not many. But more important is really to start now thinking of the policies required, so that whenever we are ready to have our own artificial intelligence solutions or to buy this, we would have a proper regulation that would cater for the risks associated with it. Just for your info, there are considerations, there are infrastructure considerations that we all talk about. If artificial intelligence to be used, we need much more bandwidth to be used, because much bigger data will be communicated. We might need, from a policy perspective, to incentivize investment in deployment of infrastructure, of further infrastructure. We need to look at the connectivity and access, and we need to look at the edge computing, because now things are changing, and how we could have also data in our area. So we need to think of more exchange points of ours. We need to think of more data centers of ours, because otherwise this huge data that are used for digital, for artificial intelligence will not be ours to use. As was said previously by our friend Kosi from Benin, this data is going elsewhere. So whoever will benefit from the artificial intelligence by making deep learning, deep machine learning, will not be us. So in order to be able to do it ourselves, we need more content infrastructure. We need as well to have better cyber security. We need to have cyber security regulation, proper cyber security regulation in place that would help use data, but at the same time protect this data. Okay, there is economic and economic consideration that needs to be taken into consideration. Part of it related to data protection. IP rights, etc. Data use, so there should be data exchange regulation in place in order to decide what can be used by whom, where, and when. There should be more clearer policies to encourage innovation and research, because artificial intelligence comes from innovation and research. In our opinion, public sector should be an early adopter of artificial intelligence, because then everybody else will come behind. There are social culture considerations that needs to be taken into place. Labor market. Now, if we are going, let's say in 10 years from now, we'll have more artificial intelligence in place. What about the skill set required? Are we ready? So we need to start now to educate people properly to be ready for that time, because then the job is no longer the same job. And we need to have clear ways of upskilling our current labor. We need to take into consideration inclusiveness and diversity, because in artificial intelligence, we may miss the human part of it, whether race, gender, disability people. So we need to have this into consideration while putting the framework of how we are going forward with artificial intelligence. Certainly trusted artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is something extremely important that would help a lot, but at the same time, can we trust it? It will rely on a huge amount of data. Big part of it is personal. Is this data going to be used properly? How can we put framework of policies that would help making sure it is not to abuse humans? Last one is governance consideration. Governance, it has to be a multi-stakeholder approach in discussing artificial intelligence policy making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. Now the floor is open for question. Yeah, the gentleman. Sorry. I am so sorry, sir. How many questions do we have? We only have 10 minutes. So, how many ladies? One lady? Okay. Well, two ladies. Yeah, of course. Okay. Could you start? So, gentleman, you could start?
Thank you, Chair. On blockchain technology, I don't know if you've heard of hash graphs before. The guy who was talking about, sorry, forgot your name, who was talking about blockchain. Have you heard of hash graphs?
H what?
Hash graph.
Hash graph?
Yeah.
Is this a new technology? Yeah, you can stand up and say your name. You can talk with us about this technology.
Sorry, I'm Moses from South Africa. Basically, it's a technology that can be used for blockchain mining. Uses less power. So I just wanted your take on on blockchain technology using hash graphs.
Thank you a lot for your input. We will consider that in the next meeting or other meetings. It's called the hash graphs. So it is regards to GIS for mining, only mining of data or mining of photos or picture. That is called hash graphs.
Okay, not only mining, but you can use it for resolving algorithms as well.
Okay, thank you. Please introduce yourself first.
Okay, thank you for valuable information. Actually, I have two questions. The first one dedicated to Mr. Walid. Is there any relation between the machine to machine, which is a part of the IoT, and the AI? This is the first question.
The second question to Mr. Pop, as I think he is representative of ICANN. What's the rules now if we are going and need a development in Africa, especially for internet? As you know that regarding IB version 4 and IB version 6, most of world now they are transited to already to the IB version 6, but in Africa most of countries not yet. What's your rules to make awareness about that and help the countries in Africa to develop and to lead them to be transited from IB version 4 to IB version 6. The last one is to the
I think this is enough. Two question, please.
Yes.
To have another question. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, first question about hash graph. I think you mean Merkle tree that's used by miners on a network blockchain. If you mean this, it's a tree of hash that miners works on it. It gets a hash from every two transactions, and then until it goes to the root hash. And this is a hash of the block, if you mean a Merkle tree. But hash graph, I don't hear about it. But the question about relation machine to machine, yes, in our smart contracts, machines need to talk to each other and make a transaction from each other, especially when Internet of Things come into the picture. The machines need to make a transactions. For example, you can the machine can request a payment and pay for this transaction automatically using cryptocurrencies, if I understand your question well. Thank you. Please.
Yeah, let me say something. These technologies could become combined. This means you could use AI with blockchain, AI with stamps. Yeah, but
Very quickly, so Afrinic made a very elaborate presentation on, IP version 4 and the looming depletion and the real urgent need to for network operators to put in measures to really transition to V6. It is a reality that we are actually not going to get any more expansions on that address space. So it is important that we actually support transition initiatives. And they're doing a lot of trainings, country by country. I could attest to that, and I've been part of some of them. So is something being done about creating the awareness that V4 is getting depleted and we need to move? Definitely yes. Is it happening? Are our network operators actually taking the steps to migrate? Not at the pace that we would love to, but definitely it is important. Now, in terms of emerging technologies, if these devices are going to be connected to the internet, because not all of them have to, sometimes they don't need to, then our role would be to engage, those communities that maybe develop the sensors and the rest to ensure that to make them aware of the existing standards, so that those devices actually comply to existing standards and conform to V6, for example, because that will be the next generation addressing space. So yeah, to that extent, we would be relevant, but we are not the only, party that is part of this initiative. There are so many other organizations that are trying to help. But definitely a lot is being done in terms of trainings on V6 migration awareness.
this is not a short answer, by the way. It's a long answer. Okay, Mary. Mary said you.
very much. I'm Mary. First, I want to say that machine can never overtake human being. You can hear? Hello? Okay, you can hear me. So, I want to challenge Mohammed that machine cannot overtake human being. The only thing is that there will be a handshake between machine and human being. Right? Machine will go faster than human being because it's the human being that will command machine on what to do, and it has no soul, it has no mind. There are behavioral issues that machine cannot handle, so human being can still handle. Now, I'm looking at political will. What recommendation should we give to our heads of states or our leaders to develop the political will to be able to allow this? Because I can see artificial intelligence helping us, or blockchain helping us to fight corruption. Corruption is the bane of Africa. So what communication, what information do we pass on to them so that we can tell them that there is the benefit and the gain of using artificial intelligence and blockchain. Then capacity building, from what level do we start? Do we start from the what level to start building capacity on how to propagate the artificial intelligence? Thank you.
My name is Evelyn.
I'm just going to accept the challenge, because when it comes to artificial intelligence, I think there are three parts. There are supervised learning and unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning. And reinforcement learning is a part of artificial intelligence that everyone is afraid of, because humans are no longer telling machines what to do. You do not dictate to machines what to do. Machines take decisions on their own. They decide. They think intellectually. They have the ability to think. As we do have, I think. And I can elaborate more on that, but since we are running out of time, yes, of mine. I'm very glad.
My name is Evelyn from Kenya. I'm going to start with a feedback to the Secretariat. First, I'm disappointed by the lack of a woman in your panel. Then, I will start by saying why I am disappointed.
Who gives us this opportunity now to talk?
Yes, I am disappointed because when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's going to affect gender relations in a way that you have not touched on it. You have touched on matters of technology, a lot of economy, but I don't hear the social aspect. Women are being affected by artificial intelligence in the following ways. We are now having revenge porn being developed by artificial intelligence. We now have issues of blockchain. Blockchain is all about financial inclusion. Where are the women in what you're talking about? You've talked about all these things, but you're not bringing out the social impact of all this. What I would like the Secretariat to do in future, there are women who are well versed in these things. We would like to have these issues at the center of all these things. We cannot talk about technology, talk about economics, talk about everything else, but leave out the social issues. It's not right.
I think that there is oversensitivity in this matter, because we are not talking about something that this is totally gender neutral. And in fact, I spoke already about social considerations that needs to be taken into consideration, and I said gender, and I said race, and I said disabilities, because this is a general thing for everyone. In fact, yesterday there was a session that was full of women, and no man said that it is a problem of men. So it's really, we need to get out of the sensitivity. We are talking about expertise in the matter, and we are coming here to help everyone. It is in our duty to help you and to help others. I cannot be in a place to defend myself that I'm not giving you the same right as I'm giving a man. We are doing this for sure. And I reiterate what was written here. Social culture consideration. You have not heard it, but I said, after labor market, inclusiveness and diversity. and should affect diversity, race, gender, elderly, disabilities. We are making sure that we are serving everyone. Now, coming back, yes, artificial intelligence and especially artificial intelligence will affect the whole world from all perspectives, and may affect always the one behind, lagging. So we need as soon as possible that governments start putting in a multi-stakeholder approach. So everyone should be part of it, in a forum to discuss and put draft policies that would make sure of inclusiveness and diversity. Thank you very much.
Yeah, also, there is DNS for women, not for men. Okay. That is the end of, please, make this other question to be offline. Sorry for that. Yeah, and just two questions, 20 seconds, 20 seconds. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Toby from Nigeria. So you mentioned about the future workforce needs to manage AI processes, upskilling. But my question is, are you giving some study on the current impacts of AI on the workplace, displacements, will it be job losses in particular industries where AI technology will displace some low and mid-level jobs? Has that been given some consideration? Because I know this year there was a World Economic Forum study that focused on that. So what is it going to the current job displacements now arise from AI technologies? Thank you.
I'll give a short answer. I didn't hear everything, but yes, of course, there is a displacement in the type of job for all levels, and there is a report done by WEF about the 2040 job skills required and different type of jobs. I think everybody needs to read it to understand, but all governments and private sector have to start today to work on preparing the community, the future, our kids, to be ready by then for this type of different job skills that would need part of it industry specific and part of it computing specific. And from the other side is upscaling the current labor capability so they don't lag behind.
Last question from this gentleman, only to finish this session. Yeah, go ahead. Henriette, do you have a question also? Yeah, okay. Henriette, this gentleman first, and then you. Introduce yourself, please. So until we get another one, Henriette, could you take question?
Thanks very much for giving me the floor. I just wanted to point out to the panel that I think not to take the comment from the floor about the focus on the impacts on specific people, in a constructive way. I think AI is a huge area. It's actually digitalization, artificial intelligence, machine learning. They're on a continuum, and I think that it's not enough for us to just bring women to the IGF. I think when women in the IGF are beginning to ask questions about the specific relevance, the specific impact of the topics we discuss on women, that's a positive input, and I think we should just take that as something to plan for in the future. And I think what we're learning from this is that just mentioning gender and just mentioning women, usually in combination with youth and people with disability, is not enough. We really need to look at impacts on gender, on women, on people of different genders in a substantial way. And I think I'm very proud actually that this is being raised here, and I think the next IGF is going to probably have more, the next African IGF, more focus on these topics.
Yeah, go ahead.
Abdul Qadir Abdulmula. I'm a consultant at the Sudanese regulator, TEPRA. I have a comment as far as the blockchain is concerned. I think the experience has shown that for any technology to succeed, unless somebody has a monopoly, is to have a well-placed, agreeable, globally implemented standards. So until this is happening, takes place in worldwide, I think it will take a while until this technology succeed. The second comment I have is about AI. I recall a story that happened when one of the companies, they connected two machines to have some sort of communication between them. I think my message I need to comment when they started to act in a different way until the companies had to stop the experience. So please can you give some comments?
Yes, actually it was Facebook, I believe, when it started, when two computers with artificial intelligence software started talking to each other. And then after like a couple of minutes, those two computers started talking in a language that humans could not understand. I mean, the engineers who developed even the algorithm, the artificial intelligence algorithm. Well, I didn't want to talk about that because of the time, but in the end, I mean, they end up shutting down the two machines because they were unable to understand the language of those two computers. So, and this is one of the reinforcement learning algorithms used by artificial intelligence. Thank you.
That is the end. Enjoy your lunch. Sorry for being late. Sorry. Make this question to the panelists.
Thank you very much, all, and bon appetit. As I indicated, those who have given their passport to Mrs. Mahlet should go and collect their document and some money. Lunch is ready. You can go and have it. And we resume at 2 p.m. exactly with a session on digital economy, SDGs, and the AU Agenda 2063 to be moderated by Mr. Luc Masidimbazi from Congo. Bon appetit, and thank you, the panelists who did a very good job, and bon appetit again. Merci.
السلام عليكم. انا بعتذر. والله كذاب. انا بعتذر. انا بعتذر والله. لا لا بس انا Thank you.